It was a quiet afternoon when everything I thought I knew about my life fell apart. My name is Mark, and for 10 years, I believed I was living in a stable, happy marriage with my wife, Linda. We didn't have kids, but we had a life filled with shared dreams, vacations, and long evenings spent talking about everything and nothing. At least, that's what I thought. That day, I decided to leave work early. It wasn't something I usually did, but I wanted to surprise Linda with her favorite flowers and take her out for a coffee at her favorite cafe. She had been distant lately, claiming she was overwhelmed with work and needed space to clear her head. I chalked it up to stress. Her job as an interior designer could be demanding. As I parked near the cafe, I saw her through the large window. Linda sat at a corner table, facing a man I didn't recognize. They were leaning in close, talking in hushed tones, and she was laughing in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her hand rested on his, and there was a familiarity between them that made my stomach twist. For a moment, I told myself it was innocent. Maybe he was a client or an old friend. But deep down, something felt wrong. I grabbed the flowers and walked inside, my heart pounding like a drum. As I approached the table, neither of them noticed me. I stood there, frozen, until Linda finally glanced up. Her smile vanished the instant our eyes met. The man, tall, well-dressed, and oozing confidence, turned to look at me, his expression unreadable. "Mark," Linda stammered, pulling her hand away from his as though the distance between them could erase what I'd just seen. "What are you doing here?" I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small piece of paper I had scribbled on just moments earlier in the car, and placed it in front of her. The note read, "Don't come home." She stared at it, her face pale, as if the words themselves were a slap. The man glanced at the note, then at me, and leaned back in his chair with an infuriatingly calm demeanor, like this was just another day for him. "Mark, let me explain," Linda started, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and walked out, leaving the flowers on the table. I could hear her calling my name, but I didn't stop. As I reached my car, I sat in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something, but instead, I just sat there, stunned. The woman I had trusted with my life was sitting in a cafe with another man, holding his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. But the worst was yet to come. That night, Linda did come home, despite my note. And what she did next left me questioning everything about the life we had built together. Linda walked through the front door that evening as if nothing had happened. She wasn't carrying the note, nor did she look upset or apologetic. Instead, she looked composed, as though she had spent hours rehearsing whatever she was about to say. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, staring blankly at the TV that wasn't even on. My mind was racing, playing back every detail of what I'd seen at the cafe. The way she laughed, the way she touched his hand. It was as if I'd been staring at a stranger who just happened to look like my wife. "Mark," she said, dropping her purse on the chair near the door. "We need to talk." I didn't move. I didn't even look at her. "You think?" she sighed, walking closer and sitting down on the edge of the couch. The audacity of her to act so calm was infuriating. "It's not what you think," she started, her tone overly measured, like she was trying to soothe a child. "Really?" I said, finally turning to face her. "Because what I think is that my wife was on a date with another man this afternoon, holding his hand and laughing like she hasn't laughed with me in years. So, if it's not that, please enlighten me, Linda." She flinched slightly at my tone but didn't falter. "He's just a friend. We were talking about work. That's all it was." I let out a bitter laugh, standing up and pacing the room. "A friend? You don't hold hands with friends, Linda. You don't look at them like they hung the moon. You don't act like you're falling in love with them right in the middle of a cafe where your husband could walk in at any moment." Her calm facade cracked for a split second, and I saw it. The guilt, the fear. But just as quickly, she masked it with indignation. "You're overreacting, Mark. You're blowing this out of proportion. Nothing happened. Don't lie to me," I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. "I saw you, Linda. I saw everything. Don't stand there and insult my intelligence." She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing him. But it's not what you think. It's not serious. It's complicated. Complicated? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. What's complicated about cheating on your husband? I didn't cheat, she snapped. Not physically, anyway. We've been talking, yes, but it's just emotional. I've been unhappy, Mark, for a long time. And he listens to me. He understands me in a way you don't anymore. Her words hit me like a freight train. So this is my fault? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You're saying this happened because I failed you somehow? She didn't answer, but the silence was all the confirmation I needed. I shook my head, my heart breaking into a million pieces. You could have talked to me, Linda. You could have told me you were unhappy. But instead, you went behind my back and found someone else to listen to you. She stood up, her arms still crossed. I didn't plan for this to happen, Mark. It just did. And honestly, I don't even know if I want to fix this anymore. Those words were like a dagger to the heart. Then why are you here? Why did you come back? She hesitated, then said something that made my blood run cold. Because I wasn't ready to leave yet. I wanted to talk to you first, to see if we could work something out. But now, I stared at her, feeling a mixture of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. Get out, I said through gritted teeth. Mark, please, no. You made your choice, Linda. Now I'm making mine. Pack your things and leave. I can't do this anymore. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded, turned, and walked up the stairs to pack. As I listened to the sound of drawers opening and closing, I sat back down on the couch, numb. My mind raced with thoughts of what she'd done, who this man was, and how long this had been going on. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. What she did next would take this betrayal to a level I never could have imagined. It didn't take long for Linda to pack. She came down the stairs with a single suitcase, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, but I wasn't in the mood for more excuses or lies. Where will you go? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I wasn't sure why I even cared. Maybe it was the lingering sense of duty after 10 years of marriage. To a friend's place, she replied curtly, avoiding eye contact. Is it him? I asked bluntly. She froze, her grip tightening on the handle of her suitcase. That pause told me everything I needed to know. You know what? Don't answer that, I said, waving my hand dismissively. Just go. Without another word, she walked out the door, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where she had stood, replaying every moment of the last few months in my head. The late nights, the sudden work trips, the constant excuses. It all made sense now. But just when I thought the worst was over, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You did the right thing, Mark. She's not worth it. Thought you should know what she's been up to. Check your email. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Who was this? And how did they know what was happening? Curiosity got the better of me. I opened my laptop and logged into my email. Sure enough, there was an email waiting for me with the subject line, "The truth about Linda." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Did I really want to know? Of course I did. I clicked on the email, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were pictures, dozens of them, of Linda and the man from the cafe. They weren't just having coffee. They were at a hotel, walking hand in hand, laughing, kissing. The timestamps on the photos went back months. And then there was the video, a shaky, low-quality clip of them in a hotel room. Linda's voice was unmistakable as she laughed and said, "Mark will never find out. He's too trusting." I slammed the laptop shut, my chest tightening with a mix of rage and heartbreak. This wasn't just an emotional affair. She had lied to my face, betrayed me, and now, someone else was rubbing it in. The worst part? I had no idea who sent the email, but I was going to find out. And when I did, I'd get to the bottom of just how deep this betrayal went. I barely slept that night. My mind was spinning with questions, none of which I had answers to. Who had sent the email? Why had they sent it? And how did they know so much about Linda's betrayal? By morning, my exhaustion had turned into determination. I decided to respond to the unknown number that had texted me. My message was short and to the point. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" It didn't take long to get a reply. My phone buzzed just a few minutes later. "A friend. Let's just say I know Linda better than you think. She's not who you believe she is. If you want the full story, meet me at the park near your house at 2 p.m. I'll be wearing a black hoodie." I stared at the message, debating whether or not I should go. This felt like something out of a bad movie, but at the same time, curiosity gnawed at me. If there was more to Linda's betrayal, I needed to know. By 1:45 p.m., I was sitting in my car, parked near the entrance to the park. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweaty. What was I even doing? Meeting a stranger who claimed to know my wife's secrets? It sounded ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this person had answers I needed. At exactly 2 p.m., I saw someone in a black hoodie walking toward a bench under a large oak tree. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and approached them. The person, who I now saw was a man, probably in his mid-30s, looked up as I approached. His face was partially hidden by the hood, but I could see enough to know I didn't recognize him. "You're Mark," he said, his voice low and steady. "Yeah, and you are?" I asked, folding my arms. "Call me Dan," he said, gesturing for me to sit. I hesitated but eventually sat down, keeping some distance between us. "How do you know Linda?" I asked. He let out a bitter laugh. "I used to work with her. We were close for a while. But let's just say I learned the hard way what kind of person she really is." "What's that supposed to mean?" Dan pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "Look for yourself." On the screen was a series of messages, texts between Linda and someone saved as Eric. The messages were explicit, filled with details about their meetings and plans to keep Mark in the dark. "She's been seeing Eric for almost a year," Dan said. "He's married too, by the way. I found out when I caught her and Eric together at an office party. She didn't even care that I saw them. Just told me to mind my own business." I stared at the messages, feeling a wave of nausea. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because I've been where you are," he said, his voice softening. "I know what it's like to feel like a fool. I thought you deserved to know the truth before she drags you down any further." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to thank him, but another part of me wanted to scream. This wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, planned and executed right under my nose. As I handed his phone back, Dan added, "She's not going to stop, Mark. People like Linda, they don't change." I learned that the hard way. I left the park feeling more broken than ever, but I also felt something else, an undeniable urge to take control. Linda thought she could play me for a fool, but she was about to learn just how wrong she was. Driving home from the park, I could barely keep my hands steady on the wheel. Dan's words echoed in my head. "She's not going to stop." That thought infuriated me, but it also ignited something I hadn't felt in days: clarity. Linda had lied, cheated, and humiliated me. I'd spent the last 24 hours swimming in shock and heartbreak, but now I needed to focus. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. When I got home, I immediately grabbed my laptop and started digging. Dan had mentioned Eric's name, and it wasn't long before I found him on social media. Eric was everything I wasn't: polished, charming, and from the looks of his family photos, completely fake. He had a wife, 2 kids, and a big house in the suburbs. The thought of him sitting at my table, stealing my wife while playing the perfect family man, made my blood boil. I saved screenshots of his posts, his work profile, and anything else I could find. I didn't have a full plan yet, but I wanted to be prepared. Linda and Eric thought they were untouchable. I was about to prove them wrong. As I stared at the screen, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda. "I need to pick up the rest of my things tomorrow. Will you be home?" Her audacity was unbelievable. She'd barely left, and now she wanted to waltz back in like it was no big deal. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied, "I'll be here. Come at 5. The next day, I spent hours preparing for her arrival. I printed the photos and texts Dan had shown me and placed them neatly on the dining room table. I also printed screenshots of Eric's family photos, just to drive the point home. At exactly 5 p.m., Linda walked in. She was dressed impeccably, as always, her expression a mix of guilt and annoyance. "I'm just here to grab my stuff," she said curtly, heading toward the stairs. "Not so fast," I said, stepping in front of her. "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes. "Mark, we've already been through this." "I told you." "No, you listen this time," I snapped, cutting her off. I pointed to the dining table. "Sit down." Her eyes flicked to the table, and I saw her face pale when she noticed the pile of papers. Slowly, she sat, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "What is this?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. "This," I said, spreading the papers out in front of her, "is everything. The texts, the photos, the hotel visits, Eric's life, his wife, his kids. You thought I was too blind to figure it out, but guess what? I know everything now, Linda." She stared at the evidence, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Mark, I can explain." "No." I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. "You've done enough talking. Now it's my turn." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "You lied to me. You cheated. And you didn't even have the decency to hide it. You sat there, laughing at me, thinking I'd never find out. Well, guess what? I did. And now, you're going to face the consequences." Her composure cracked, and for the first time, I saw real panic in her eyes. "What do you mean? What are you going to do?" I leaned in close, my voice low and firm. "I'm not going to hurt you, Linda, but I'm also not going to let you walk away from this unscathed. You've destroyed our marriage, humiliated me, and lied to my face. I hope it was worth it." She didn't respond, her eyes darting between the papers and my face. For once, Linda had nothing to say. As she gathered her things and left the house for the last time, I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of anger, relief, and emptiness. But I knew this wasn't the end. Linda and Eric had built their lies on my back. Now, it was my turn to dismantle them piece by piece. The silence in the house after Linda left was deafening. For the first time in years, I was truly alone. But rather than wallow in the emptiness, I focused on what came next. Linda and Eric thought they could move on without consequences. That wasn't going to happen. I couldn't let them get away with this, not after what they'd done. The first step was simple. I drafted an email to Eric's wife, Michelle. It was brief but clear. I attached screenshots of the texts and photos along with a message. "I thought you deserved to know the truth about your husband. If you'd like to talk, let me know." I hesitated before hitting send, wondering if I was crossing a line. But then I remembered Linda laughing in that cafe, dismissing me like I was nothing. I clicked send and felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The next morning, I got a response. Michelle wanted to meet. She suggested a quiet coffee shop away from her neighborhood, and I agreed. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in the corner with a strained expression. Michelle was elegant, the kind of woman who carried herself with dignity even in the face of disaster. "Mark?" she asked as I approached. I nodded and sat across from her. "Michelle, thanks for meeting me." She wasted no time. "Is it true? All of it?" "Yes," I said, sliding the photos and texts across the table. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but Eric and my wife Linda have been having an affair for nearly a year." She looked at the evidence, her hands trembling slightly. "I suspected something," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I never thought it was this bad." We talked for nearly an hour, piecing together timelines and filling in gaps. By the end of it, Michelle was determined to confront Eric, and I couldn't blame her. As we parted ways, she turned to me and said, "They've underestimated us, Mark. Let's show them they were wrong." Her words stuck with me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I wasn't alone. But the real confrontation was still ahead, and I knew it wouldn't be as civil as this meeting. The day Michelle confronted Eric was one I'll never forget. She had texted me earlier that morning, "I'm doing it today. Be ready for whatever comes next." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I didn't have to wait long to find out. By noon, my phone was buzzing with messages, one from Linda and two from an unknown number. Linda's message was short and sharp. "What the hell did you do, Mark?" The unknown number turned out to be Eric. His messages were full of anger and barely coherent. "You're a coward, Mark." "Involving Michelle? What's wrong with you?" "Stay out of my life, or you'll regret it." I almost laughed at the irony of his threats. "Stay out of your life? You've been in mine for a year." Michelle had clearly pulled no punches. Later that evening, she called me and recounted everything. She had confronted Eric with the evidence, and predictably, he had denied it at first. But when she showed him the photos and texts, his excuses fell apart. "He tried to blame me," Michelle said over the phone, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and triumph. "He said it was my fault because I wasn't there for him." "Can you believe that?" "I can," I replied bitterly. "It's the same excuse Linda used." "What are you going to do now?" Michelle asked. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted, "but I'm not letting this slide." That night, Linda showed up at my house unannounced. She looked disheveled, a far cry from her usual polished self. "You've ruined everything," she said as she stepped inside. "Ruined what, Linda?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Your perfect little affair? Your chance to keep living a double life while I stayed in the dark?" Her eyes flared with anger. "You had no right to drag Eric's family into this. This was between us." "Between us?" I shot back. "You made it everyone's business the moment you started sneaking around with him. Don't stand here and play the victim, Linda." She opened her mouth to respond but couldn't seem to find the words. For once, she looked defeated. "What do you want, Linda?" I finally asked, my voice quieter but no less firm. "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't think it would come to this." I shook my head, feeling a pang of pity that I quickly pushed aside. "It's too late for regrets. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. The fallout was only just beginning. The days after Linda's visit were anything but quiet. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages from mutual friends, family members, and even a few of Linda's co-workers who had somehow caught wind of the situation. News traveled fast, and it wasn't long before people started taking sides. Linda, unsurprisingly, played the victim. She told anyone who would listen that I had overreacted, that I was spiteful and trying to ruin her life. Eric, on the other hand, went silent. I suspected Michelle had him cornered at home, but I didn't care enough to confirm. What I hadn't anticipated, though, was how deeply this would ripple through my life. Friends I thought were mine began questioning me. Why I had exposed Linda so publicly, why I had dragged Eric's family into it. I couldn't believe it. One of our mutual friends, Claire, called me one evening. "Mark, I just heard about everything. Are you okay?" I hesitated. Claire and Linda had been friends for years, and I wasn't sure if I could trust her, but I decided to be honest. "Honestly? No, Claire. I'm not okay. Linda cheated on me, lied to me, and humiliated me. And now I'm the bad guy for exposing it?" Claire sighed. "Look, I'm not saying what she did was right, but maybe you could have handled it differently. People are talking, Mark. You've made things messy." Her words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Messy? Claire, she betrayed me. What did you expect me to do? Just sit quietly and let her walk all over me?" Claire was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I replied, my voice cold. "She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the fallout." The call ended shortly after, leaving me angrier than ever. It seemed like everyone wanted to avoid the hard truth, that Linda and Eric were the villains in this story, not me. But amidst all the chaos, there was one moment of clarity. Michelle called me again, her tone more determined than before. "Mark," she said, "I think it's time we take this further." "What do you mean?" I asked, unsure of where she was going. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she said, "and if you're willing, I think we should both file formal complaints against them. Eric's job has a strict policy about workplace affairs. If we go through with this, he could lose his position, and Linda might face consequences too." I paused, letting her words sink in. It felt drastic, but at the same time, They had crossed every boundary imaginable. "Let's do it," I said finally. "It's time they faced the full weight of what they've done." As I hung up the phone, I realized that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life again. The fallout wasn't over yet. If anything, it was just beginning. A week after agreeing to Michelle's plan, the wheels were in motion. We both filed formal complaints against Eric and Linda. Michelle had collected enough evidence from Eric's phone and work emails to back up our claims, while I provided additional documentation. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about accountability. The fallout was immediate. Eric's company launched an internal investigation, and within days, he was placed on leave. Linda, whose work often overlapped with Eric's, was also questioned. Their so-called discreet affair had been anything but. Word spread quickly among their colleagues, and their reputations began to crumble. Linda called me several times during the investigation, but I didn't pick up. She left voicemails filled with a mix of anger, regret, and desperate pleas. "Mark, you've made your point. Stop this now. Please. We can fix this." But there was nothing left to fix. Michelle and I kept in touch throughout the process. She was a fierce ally, and I admired her strength. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. By the end of the month, the results were clear. Eric was fired for violating company policy, and Linda's contract with her firm wasn't renewed. Both of them had burned bridges they couldn't rebuild. Part 10. Moving on with the dust finally settling, I started to focus on rebuilding my life. The house, once filled with painful memories, began to feel like mine again. I redecorated, removing any trace of Linda's presence. It was cathartic, like shedding an old skin. One evening, as I was unpacking a box of old photos, I came across one from our wedding day. Linda looked radiant, and I remembered how happy I'd been in that moment. It was a bittersweet reminder of what I thought we had. I didn't hate her anymore, not entirely. The anger had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. She made her choices, and I made mine. As for Michelle, she became an unexpected friend. We met for coffee occasionally, sharing updates and reflecting on everything that had happened. She was moving forward, too, focusing on her kids and her own sense of closure. One day, she said something that stuck with me. "You can't let this define you, Mark. It's part of your story, but it's not the whole book." She was right. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.